Good evening. Welcome to Tripping on Legends. I am Christopher Balzano.
And I am Ella Balzano.
And I am your host.
Christopher Balzano?
I am your host, so what does that make you, do you think?
The sort of co-host?
Sort of the part-time co-host?
Part-time co-host.
Part-time co-host. And a fan favorite.
I'm a fan
So,
favorite.
yeah, you are.
I feel honored.
So don't screw it up. Because you could totally be replaced as both my daughter and my co-host at any given time. I've already gotten other children who say, we would like to be on the show. Can you kick that other girl off? And I've put them in the queue, if you will. Well, thank you very much. Welcome to Tripping on Legends, episode 82.
Oh my god.
It is oh my god because if you think about when we went to Midnight .fm, Midnight FM.
Oh, where it's always midnight.
Excellent, good. I think we were at episode 70.
70s?
Yeah, and we had done, or something like that. It was in the low 70s, and I had done maybe 4 or 5 episodes in months. I hadn't done an episode, and I think episode 66 was a year ago today.
66.
Right? Or I posted it or something like that. Whatever it was, it came up, and that was 66, and it's like, wow, in a year.
66.
We did none, and then boom, and it was an explosion. And partly because we are on our new network, Midnight FM.
Where it's always midnight.
Thank you. Partly because we've found another life on our Instagram Live. You can follow us on Instagram at IGTV. All those good things at Spooky Tripping. And of course our Facebook. It's kind of been an interesting journey because I went back. My students right now, is kind of a link in because we are doing hauntings of schools and the like tonight. My students are doing me.
They are?
Which
Or
sounds
like
really inappropriate. But what I mean by that is they are, because we finished the quarter, and we are kind of treading water until the next quarter begins, and some kids are finishing up because they have a lot of late work. My students are actually editing the Haunted Ocala book.
Haunted Ocala.
And in doing that, they went back to my archives and they started finding not only old pictures of me from Tripping on Legends, but also old episodes of Tripping on Legends.
Oh!
Where there was no video. And so it's, for those of you who have been following us all along, this began as a just strictly podcast. As a strictly a podcast. My voice kind of cracked there. And we went to the video format every other week, right? So we could stretch out the episodes because we didn't always have something to talk about. So every other week, for a while, we would do a live episode back in the days of Natalie, where we would do kind of like an episode that involved some kind of paranormal theme, right? Some kind of link. We had the lores versus lies, and we had the ethics of legend tripping in a cemetery, and things that weren't about a specific legend. What the show has become, in some ways, is a combination of those two things. So because we're spending less time out in the field, because of commitments...
I hate Rona.
Because of Corona, we are dealing with, here's a legend trip that we want to do, that we plan to do, but in the interim, let's talk about some of the themes, maybe even more heavily than we did back in the day. So, we kind of have the perfect crisscross episode tonight because I kept thinking I had done this episode, and I know that I had teased it, and there were a few times where I was going to talk about it, and then all of a sudden we ran out of time. Now we have the extended hour and a half. And I looked back and I keyworded some of the terms in this and some of the things in this, and we hadn't actually done it. So I'm like, this is a really great time because I always go #follow the signs. They want me to present to them by Sunday usually what I'm going to be talking about that week. And I almost never know. But then things click into place. I was doing an interview for Paradise After Dark, which if you're not listening to Paradise After Dark...
Is that Mark?
Mark who?
Lindsay?
No. This is a true crime podcast out of Florida.
I've
It's
heard
out of
it.
Naples, actually.
Is it the one with like, the axe-looking thingy?
Yeah, exactly.
That
We
one.
have the stickers on the computer and
They're
everything.
everywhere.
And I was speaking to them, and we got into. They were doing a special Halloween episode. It was funny because we got to almost. You know me, I ramble. I'm doing it right now. We got to almost none of the episodes or none of the hauntings that we were planning on talking about. But what we ended up doing is I went off on schools and why schools are haunted, some of which I'll repeat tonight. And I was right on the verge of telling them on air the story that I'm going to tell you. You're already yawning. The story I'm going to tell you tonight, I was going to tell them, and we got kind of sidetracked for a little bit. And they talked about a haunting that they're kind of obsessed with. Or not a haunting, but a true crime case. Got in my car. Immediately went to their podcast because it was an episode I hadn't heard. And I was looking for the episodes because it's multi-episode for them on that. And instead, I literally found, like, the first thing that popped up was an old episode of theirs which talks about the location we're going to talk about tonight.
I thought you said there's only one location. You told me
Well,
to get a bunch. I got 5.
Well, we're actually featuring a haunted legend tonight as well. You're the backup.
I'm the backup.
You're the backup. Back it up.
I'm 5.
So it felt perfectly in sync to do this episode tonight, and it's amazing just how things fall like that, because this little part here where I said read the account, see that it's highlighted.
Mm-hmm.
I can talk about the account a lot more now because I've heard their episode and I've done a little bit more research on it. So tonight we are talking about what I call the Crisscross Haunted, and by the Crisscross Haunted I mean there are some explanations for the paranormal which crisscross, right? So you have 2 locations or you have 2 hauntings, and people can't figure out why the place is haunted. And so what ends up happening is the haunting in one place explains the haunting in the other, and the haunting in the other explains the haunting, and they crisscross. Who's the ghost? Who's the ghost? You know, I think a really good example of this, it's kind of a cause and effect thing. A really good example of this would be the Lizzie Borden house.
Yeah.
And the Lizzie Borden house is rumored to be haunted. It's haunted. It's rumored to be haunted by the people who played themselves out in that story. And if you don't know Lizzie Borden, I can't get into that. Like, you don't know the parent. Why are you listening to this show if you don't know who Lizzie Borden is?
Lizzie Borden took an axe. She gave her mother 40 whacks. When she saw what she had done, she gave her father... No.
Something like that.
She gave her father 40 whacks, right? Or was it her mother?
Moving on.
Okay, yeah, that one.
People say that Lizzie's in the house, that the father's in the house, Andrew's in the house. I've never really heard the mother, the stepmother, I should say, is in the house. Bridget's in the house. Everyone from that cast seems to be the haunting. However, oftentimes people believe that Lizzie herself was possessed because there was a murder that happened before that. And so the first murders create a paranormal environment for something to happen to Lizzie, which then creates a paranormal environment. And these 2 stories feed each other, and the hauntings may feed each other as well. So it's really one of those situations where you have these 2 haunted locations that are right next to each other, and each kind of feeds off the other one. In doing that, I thought it would be a really good opportunity, even though we've done it a few times, to talk about haunted schools, to talk about why is it that schools need to be haunted. And so I thought I would bring in an authority on a school or schools, someone who's still in school, and maybe bring in a second guest who can talk about schools, to talk about what the environment of a school, because I'd also like to know this. Is a school more likely to be haunted now than before, right? So in other words, because of the paranormal environment, because of the change of it, because of the rise of the internet and urban legends like that, are school rumors and ghost stories spread more quickly because of modern storytelling, because of modern schools. So I decided to bring in one of my favorite school-aged people. unless she can't do her job and gets replaced.
Oh my god.
I'm joking. I can't even get you to pay attention. Never mind someone else. Do you think that it's more or less likely that a school is haunted than another building? And why?
Well, I guess it depends on the school's history. Like, for
What do you
example, if a school... Do you remember that shooting like 3 years ago in Miami?
Yeah, Lakeland or
Lakeland?
Not
whatever,
Lakeland.
wherever that was.
Yeah.
But, like, I do think that that would be more prone to, like, ghost hauntings because, like, 17 people died there than my school, which I've never heard of anyone dying there.
Okay. Parkland, not Lakeland. Parkland. So you think that if there's a tragedy that's at the school, then it's much more likely, which of course is the same for anything, right?
Yeah.
If there's a history, if there's something, if there's a moment you can attack or attach to it, it's more likely to be haunted, especially if it's based in fact, right? So someplace like Parkland, although you never hear of like Columbine being haunted, as far as I know. I know that I think they built a new school there. Probably one of the first acts of school violence, just because you're saying it, was the infamous Jeremy Wade moment. If you don't know Jeremy Wade is the subject is probably a better way of saying it, of the Pearl Jam song Jeremy. Do you know that song? I think actually I always call it saying I pronounced Jeremy wrong. I have a Jeremy here. Jeremy, am I pronouncing the name? It's Jeremy or it's Jeremy? I say Jeremy.
He says Jeremy. I say it's Jeremy. Which one's right?
We'll wait. We'll continue talking because we have a Jeremy in the audience right now, so he'll tell us. But he infamously committed suicide by shooting himself in front of his class.
Yeah.
That school's haunted.
Nice.
And the interesting thing is that no one can remember it ever being rumored to be haunted until the shooting. And then, of course, Ella's right.
Of course I'm right.
And then after the shooting, the room where it happened was turned into like a storage because no one would teach there anymore. And that became haunted. That became rumored to be haunted. And my friend, actually, Jenna, Chris and Jenna 441, actually is...
Why did you have to, like, give me your account name?
Because she was one of the original founders of Massachusetts Paranormal Crossroads. And it's important because she comes up in a lot of the stories that I tell. She went to school there. She went to school in Richardson, Texas, and she experienced that haunting. And so it wasn't just a rumor, but my interest is because she was at that school when the incident happened. Do people still tell that story, right? So does that tragedy do it? But what if the school has no tragedy? What if it just has a history, something that they can't confirm? So obviously, it's real easy for any place to be haunted when there's a dozen people that die there, or a whole bunch of people that die there. But what if there's not? Okay, so you go to a school right now. It's fairly old.
I think it was like built in like 1960 something.
Is it really?
Not 1960.
I got
More like 1980.
Okay. And so it has an older feel to it, right? It's not as modern. Like, say, for my school feels modern just because it's newly painted and all stuff like that. Does anyone tell rumors of ghosts in your school?
I've never heard of one, except maybe one in the bathroom in the cafeteria. Because, like, in the girls' room, there's, like, a blood... Like, it's not blood splatter. We don't know what it is. But it's just this, like... There's this reddish, brownish splatter on the roof. Mm-hmm. And nobody knows how it got there. So it's rumored that, like, something happened in there, and we don't know what happened.
And that's the nature of school hauntings, right? The nature of school hauntings is there's something that's going on, and people don't understand. It's tripping on legends microcosm. In that, why does no one go into that boiler room, right? Or why is the boiler room locked from? I'm just giving you an example.
Oh, I was like,
why is the boiler room locked from the inside? Or why is that elevator that used to be in order why doesn't it work anymore? Or where do those stairs go to? Or why is no one ever allowed on the roof? Or things like that. One of my favorite ghostly legends is the story that takes place in Stonehill of why there's no swimming pool.
In what?
This is in the Bridgewater Triangle. One of my favorite Bridgewater Triangle stories. Why is there no swimming pool? And it's said because the first president of the college, his little girl died there. And so that room was paved over. The pool was paved over. It was, not tennis court, basketball court. Like the parquet was put down, and it was said that there would never be a pool on campus. Well, nothing about that story is true. There is no pool below the gym. Not only that, the first 5 presidents of Stonehill, all priests. So none of them had little girls. But we believe it because there's no pool on campus. Why is there no pool on campus? And that explains it. The ghost story explains it. So stop that. Don't talk to the dog.
But
so, yeah.
I think, like, also sometimes people are like, the doors in that bathroom itself would, like, shut and open on their own. But, like, nobody was in the stalls, nobody opened them at all. So, like, that sometimes happens. But
and that would make sense.
It's not
like,
much.
That's kind of one of those, once again, like you're talking about that crisscross aspect, that's a bathroom inside of a school. So think about how many, remember we did the whole Japanese bathroom legend episode. I don't know if you've ever listened to that episode. I'm not sure if you were in on that. When we talked about all the different haunted bathrooms. And so many of these bathrooms.
You told me about this.
So many of these bathrooms were haunted because of bullying or because of things that were not going on there. And the whole symbolism of it was you're in your most private place and you get interrupted and things like that. I definitely want to say that everybody is welcome to join the discussion here tonight on these. If you know of a famously haunted school, I would love to hear from you. We would love to hear from you. The number that you can call us is 813-418-6822. So feel free to call us with your best school haunting if you want. We would love to share those online. But before we get into the main haunting tonight, which is a school haunting, Ella did a little research. And she has some ghostly schools around the country and around the world that are said to be haunted that she wanted to share. So my question to you is this. How did you pick these schools?
Well, I looked through a list of like the 50 haunted schools in the world.
So you cheated.
I didn't cheat. I did research.
You did that? How is that research? You just went 50 haunted schools.
No, I didn't. I only have 5 though, so I looked through all 50 of them because I can read that fast, and I picked the 5 that I thought that were the most interesting.
Okay, and so what did you think was interesting about them? Are there individual things on all of them that are interesting?
Yes, there is.
All right, go ahead.
And I think it's really one like side note kind of thing. I think it's really interesting. People are like, "Oh, you're so organized. You know everything. How do you memorize it?" My notes are literally many haunting, Goodrip, classroom. Who is it? 47,000 boy froze left outside past curfew. It's not organized.
No, and it's actually, but it's organized in your mind the same way my notes are never organized except for in my mind. You could not, someone else could not host this show by reading my notes.
Okay. Right. So
go on with, and how about like I usually when I say something to you and you rate it, I'm gonna rate your hauntings the way that you normally rate mine.
Okay. So El Paso High School in El Paso, Texas.
Okay.
So there are said to be like many paranormal hauntings in this, like misty hallways, and, like unexplained goo drip from the ceilings in multiple accounts.
Goo drip.
But I think most notable.
Wait, is this a high school? You said
this is a high school.
Okay.
This is But most notably, it said that there are classrooms underneath the school, and it said that there is this one girl who would study underneath. And the reason that they say she was studying underneath is because nobody knows who she is.
Knew who she was. Like
they had no idea who she was, but she appeared in the 1985 yearbook.
Really?
But nobody had seen her at all, so they thought that she was studying underground.
Yeah.
Like during like all that time, and they asked everyone in the school. Nobody knew who she was.
So she was in the yearbook.
She was in the yearbook.
Okay. And what year was this?
1985.
1985. So not that. And had hauntings happened before then? Did you get anything about that?
No, I hadn't looked at like.
Okay, you didn't do that deep. But she is seen, and is it the girl that's in the yearbook that's seen in the hallways?
Yeah. What do you mean?
Like you're saying, like, do they see the girl in the hallway?
No.
Or it's just because.
It's kind of like Roanoke. Like they don't know who she is. They don't know where she went.
And does the story go that she died somehow? Like
Yeah,
in the
like
basement?
sometimes some people think like she's a ghost or something. Because everyone says that she wasn't there on picture day, so there's no way she could have gotten her
And no one
picture
remembers
taken.
her at all.
Yeah, I think they even asked the photographers, like, hey, have you seen this girl? And they were like, no.
That's crazy. I love that. That's awesome.
I told you I did good research.
You did do good research. That's great. And wait a minute, like, so what is my ranking? Like, how do I...
1 out of 10 rulers.
Rulers?
Rulers.
1 out of 10?
Or like 1 out of 5. Whichever.
1 out of 5. Okay, I'm gonna give that one 4 rulers because I love the backstory, but I didn't connect it to the goo.
There's not too much.
I didn't connect it to the goo and stuff like that. Like why this, how the goo is related to the Phantom girl.
There's like a bunch of hauntings though, but that's.
I'm saying Jeremy and Phantom in the same episode.
Jeremy and Phantom.
Okay, excellent, good, beautiful. So number 1, I am going to give that. What did I say? 4 out of 5
4
rulers.
out of 5 rulers.
4 out of 5
Okay,
rulers.
this next one I thought was kind of interesting. No, not this one. This is the next one. This is Lomonosov Moscow State University in Russia.
Okay.
So, like, the people who made this were a scientist, I think, or like a chemistry person.
Yeah.
What is a chemist? A chemist.
Okay.
And some other guy that I don't remember the name of.
You guys in the chat room, you can also feel free to rank these as well on your ruler scale.
Yeah, they built it, and it was said that they used gulag prisoners. They forced the gulag prisoners to build it, and it said that one prisoner tried to escape, right? And he hid behind all the instruction stuff, and he died.
Died.
There are about 47,000 reports of suggestive, like 47,000 reports of suggestive construction sounds and cries on the top floors. Cries, like crying.
Like a man crying?
Like a man crying.
Do you know what the gulag is?
What's the gulag?
It's a prison.
Yes, I know.
It's a famous, like, Siberian, I believe it was in Siberia, Siberian prison. But it's famous, like, you know, Russian prison, like, they used to be, like, a catchphrase of, like, oh, I feel like I'm in the gulag here.
But
they had to do it in that accent.
They hear, like, him crying, and then they go up, and there's nobody there.
Okay.
Yeah, that's all. That one's not that interesting, but...
And it's a school now. It's a university, you said.
It's a university.
It's a university.
It's Lomonosov Moscow State University in Russia.
If anyone speaks Russian and can correct her pronunciation, that
Please.
would be awesome. All right, so that one I'm going to say...
It wasn't that interesting.
Yeah, I'm going to say 2 out of 5, because you weren't very specific. But it totally connects with what we're doing tonight. Like that, so there's some aspects of that story that have to do with it. So I am putting down, as you talk, I'm going to put down hidden chambers, like hidden rooms, right? And I'm going to put down death during construction. All right,
I can't understand your writing.
You don't need to. It's for me. All right, go ahead.
I think this one is like my 3rd favorite.
Your 3rd favorite.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so this is Dalton Hall in at the University of Prince Edward Island.
Where's Prince Edward Island?
I don't know. Let me look that up.
It's in Canada. I was
Canada, that one.
Yes.
So it said that like there was a boy in the 1960s who accidentally like got left outside during a snowstorm.
That would make sense.
And he froze to death. But it's also said that
he was accidentally left outside during a snowstorm.
Yes, but it's also theorized that he was left outside because he was out past curfew. And so, like, he went out, like, before curfew began, so he was out past curfew, and then they, like, closed the gates and stuff, or whatever, and he went back to...
So it was a boarding school?
I think so. Yeah.
Alright, that would make sense then.
And it said that there are sudden gusts of cold wind all throughout the halls.
It is Canada.
And... Here. Watery footprints that are leading to the kid's room.
Where the kid actually lived.
Where the kid lived.
Like
the dorm of the kid.
And when did this happen, did they say?
The 1960s.
The 1960s. Okay.
And people also say they see like a boy covered in snow walking down the hallway.
I love that one as well. I'm going to give that one 4 out of 5 rulers.
Good.
I'm going to give that one 4 out of 5. You know what I wish would make it even cooler?
What?
If it was he was being punished.
Yeah.
And that's why he was forced to go outside and he died while he was being punished. That would be better because that's every teacher's dream to kill one of their students. Just kidding. Just kidding. Just kidding.
Just kidding. Just kidding.
But the idea of like, it was some kind of mistake that led to his death would be kind of cool. That's the only thing I would change if I were writing that, if I were making that one up.
Okay.
All right, go ahead.
So next I have the New York University, and I'm sure.
I hate New York.
I'm sure like
One
a bunch
out
of
of 5. I hate New York.
Shut up.
Okay.
I think a bunch of people have heard of this. The Brown Building, aka the former Triangle Shirtwaist Factory. In 1911.
Oh, wait a minute.
Yes, you know
The
about
infamous,
you
like
know about
the infamous
the
triangle fire.
Triangle Shirtwaist Factory. Yeah.
The fire.
The fire.
Oh, okay. I know. All right.
In 19
Okay.
so
Wait a minute. I'm on board for this one because I actually had to teach this, teach about this fire
so
for like.
Tell me if I'm like telling it right.
All right.
So,
Wrong.
Dad.
Just kidding. Go ahead.
In 1911, a fire started on the 8th floor of the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory. It was said that a girl named Yetta, or Yida, tell me how to pronounce that
Yetta,
if you know it.
is.
Yetta jumped from the 9th floor to the bottom, and she broke her spine and femur and died in the hospital. And it said that you can like see her, or like you can see like her walking in the halls, and you can smell smoke wherever
Now,
she goes.
this is a huge case. Fast forward. Where that is now part of New York College. New
York College. It's called the Brown Building.
The Brown Building. So, for those of you guys who don't know that case, it was
New York University.
New York, well, which one? There's two.
New York University.
Okay. That's one of the most tragic workplace
industry incidents
of all time, right? Like it's a huge labor rights case. Like obviously, if you listen to the date, it's before unions, it's before employees' rights, and it was a factory that once it caught on fire because they had everybody crammed in so more people than just her died.
Yeah.
So why do you think they associate the ghost with her as opposed to how many people died in that fire? Like there was
100, I believe.
I mean, there's a lot of people. Yeah, I saw. There's a lot of people that died in that fire, so it seems kind of interesting that she's the one that's pointed out. And a lot of those names were known. Like part of the interesting thing in 7th grade collections has a whole section on it. You'll find it out next year.
Oh, great.
It's actually really boring, the story, but still, was that all these different stories. It takes the angle of different people who survived and talks about the people who died next to them. So there were a really absolutely horrible. Yes, the doors were locked.
Yeah, the doors locked. They couldn't escape.
The elevator was broken, or it wasn't allowed.
And a bunch of them jumped out the window.
And they locked the elevator too. And so it really was this horrific, historic fire. So once again, it makes sense, like you were saying with the Parkland shooting. This is another one that tragedy, and we talked about this.
They were young girls
we talked about this last week.
They were young girls.
Yeah, as people were obsessed with whether or not after the fire at. What were we talking about last week? Whatever the fire was last week, whether people had survived and stuff like that, and the fire wasn't real. That was the orphanage fire. The idea that especially fire seems to cause tragedy and seems to have people come back. So excellent one with that. I preemptively gave it a 1. I'm going to give it a 5 out of 5.
Nice.
Because that's some place that I think can truly be haunted, and I think that it would be haunted even if it wasn't in a school, though. So I'm knocking a point off and giving that a 4 out of 5.
Okay.
I'm deducting points for the landing. It's okay. What's this next one? Does that say the word Belgium?
No, it doesn't say Belgium.
All right, good, because I don't like
this one.
Belgiumese.
This one is my personal favorite, and I think you'll be able to guess why. So this is the University of Yale's, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there is a ghost.
I love whales. They're my favorite mammals. I already said that joke,
God,
but
stop.
it wasn't online.
You're not funny.
A little funny.
So there is said to be a 6-foot woman in brown overalls and her hair in a bun, and they call her Big Bertha.
Big
Bertha.
Bertha.
And
any relation to Large Marge?
Maybe. But it's said that Bertha Ramsey
Yeah.
was found dead at the foot of the stairs in one of the stairways in Wales, and it's very much been questioned that either she fell on her own, she
was
stumbled.
she a big woman, or was she a tall woman, or was she a
She
big
was
and
6
tall
foot.
woman? Okay, that's a big woman. All right.
Yeah. So it's said that people are like, oh, she fell
From the elevator.
accidentally to her own death. But some people say that she was actually pushed and murdered in cold blood.
Is there some reason why people wanted Bertha dead? Other than the fact that her name was Bertha? I don't mean to
Sorry, any Berthas in
isolate
the
any
crowd.
Berthas in the audience, but
I don't know. But my favorite part about this is that
yeah, you haven't hit me
They-
yet. You said like this is your favorite one. You haven't gotten me there
Yeah.
yet.
so they're
I love Bertha.
the security guards like know a lot about the story.
Mhm.
So at night, like she goes up and down on the lifts, like up and down and up and down and up
What do
and
you mean
down.
by lifts?
Like the lifts, I don't know, the elevators.
Elevator, yeah.
I don't go to
I
Wales.
was seeing whether you knew what a lift was.
But she would just go up and down and up and down, and the security knows this is Big Bertha. And every night when they
Why do they know it's Big Bertha?
Because like that's just like,
That's her routine.
that's just
Okay,
her
got
routine.
it. No, I got it.
So when they hear the elevator going up and down, they shout, "Here comes Big Bertha!"
Yeah.
Yeah, here
Okay.
comes Big Bertha.
That's the punchline.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they just go like, "Here comes Big Bertha."
So it's kind of like the good night George, good morning George.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Good
thing.
Night George, Good Morning
Okay.
George.
And do they find that if they don't acknowledge the Bertha, that she gets angry or something?
Yeah,
like
I
that?
think it said that if they don't like say, "Here comes Big Bertha" when she's coming up and down the elevator, I think it said the elevator doesn't work the next day.
The elevator doesn't work the next day. There you go.
And they have to walk.
Which Big Bertha, it sounds, didn't want to do herself. Excellent. Excellent. Yes, that's your Big Bertha impersonation.
That's my Big Bertha.
All right. Well, those were very cool.
How do you feel about the Big Bertha one?
3 out of 5. I didn't think that was nearly as interesting. Obviously, the Big Bertha and the Large Marge connection made it more interesting. And I don't know. Okay, so because you didn't go too deep on these, maybe we need to do a follow-up episode.
There's so many more.
But I want to know more about these ones. Like, for example, is Bertha a real person? Did Bertha really
Bertha
die?
Ramsey. Bertha Ramsey.
Bertha Ramsey, so that's a
Her
confirmed
body.
death.
That is a confirmed death. She was found at the bottom of one of the stairways.
Oh, okay. So maybe that makes it a 3.4.
Okay.
3.4. Dan!
I earned a point.
10.
Guys. I earned a 0.4, guys. Are you so proud of
You
me?
don't have to make love to the mic. So pretty cool. Now, what do those stories all have in common? Why do you think that
They all happen at schools.
they all? Well, yes, they did. But what happens?
Tragedy.
They all had tragedies attached to them. Some of them real, some of them be confirmed like Bertha, some of them not. Are you staying for the whole episode, by the way, or now that you've done your part, you're taking off?
Oh, I'm staying.
Oh, good. All right. So one of the things I talked about, and I was so much more articulate when I was on Paradise After Dark, because I had been speaking at that point. I had been speaking in an interview format for almost 8 hours straight. And so I'd had so much coffee and I was so articulate, and I was just like pop, 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 going off on things. But there's something about the initiation of a school, right? There's something about having school traditions where things are passed from the older to the younger, right? Does your school have any traditions or anything like that?
What do you mean?
Like something that's passed down from the upper grades to the lower grades, like
No,
something
because
that's
they all suck.
and maybe also because your school covers like little kids, right? So there really doesn't have an identity of
Stinky
being.
little kids. The Nutcracker.
You were a stinky little kid last year.
Yeah.
So tomorrow, no, not tomorrow, Thursday, Devin is taking the PSATs, and in my school, there were several different school traditions, and one of them was the night before the PSATs, because the day of the PSATs, seniors had off of school, and they were supposed to take that day to go and visit colleges, things like that. I don't think anyone ever really did. But the night before, it was tradition for all of the seniors to drive around Manchester, New Hampshire, and steal as many pumpkins as they could. and then they would bring those pumpkins back to Trinity, and they would display them on the front lawn. And usually, what they would end up doing is like writing like class of in pumpkin. And this was done, and you dreamed of doing it, and you were told about it by the upperclassmen. And it was interesting because when the seniors told the freshmen about it, it was always, the one you missed was better, right? When I was a freshman, the seniors did it. They gathered a gazillion pumpkins, and so it was always built up, and it was never near as good. My senior year, they actually banned it. They said you couldn't do it anymore.
Oh my God.
And we did it anyway.
That's illegal.
Well, the whole thing is illegal because you're technically stealing pumpkins from people.
Well,
so
I
don't endorse
illegal.
doing it.
It's even more illegal, yeah.
Well, it's not illegal. It's just, frowned on by the... So we collected as many pumpkins as we could. We brought them to the campus. We displayed them in the same way. It was an amazing night. And the principal ended up, he was going to like ban homecoming or something like that. And what he ended up doing is he found the average price in Manchester for a pumpkin, like by pounds, weighed every pumpkin that was on the lawn, and then took that out of our class fund. And we flipped out. And when we flipped out, everyone was like, do something about it. Like, Chris, do something about it. And so we were kind of protesting because I'm the master with words. And so my high school's theme, motto, was pride, spirit, and tradition. And I wrote this speech about how stealing those pumpkins, I was such a dick. I'm like a 17-year-old asshole I didn't have bleached hair back then. And I wrote this whole speech about how stealing these pumpkins was prideful and showed school spirit and was definitely part of our tradition. And he was an asshole for doing that. And he was totally an asshole. Anyway, but there you go. But that was a tradition, and it was passed down, and it was always big. And when we went to camp, it was always like, oh, you know what happened in the camp before this? And so it's that idea, it's got to be, and I say it's the same thing that happens with towns and locations. Hauntings, to some degree, need to be generational. It needs to be someone is passing it down to someone else. And usually it's someone older is passing it down to someone younger. And so when you hear these school hauntings, oftentimes it has to do with the seniors trying to explain to the freshmen a mystery of the school. Why something is happening. What's going on there that's unusual. So the red stain, like you were talking about on the ceiling. The person who told you that probably was told that by an 8th grader years ago. And then that 8th grader told a 6th grader. And then that 6th grader became an 8th grader and told, and so on and so on and so on. It's one of those things where it helps to bond the school. I'm not going to tell the story of Maria again.
Who's Maria?
Because I've told it on air. But me and a fellow English teacher, I'm going to give you the short version. We created this ghost named Maria. We invented a backstory about her because we were at Notre Dame High School, and it was a new school in an old building, and we felt they needed an identity. They needed to have a ghost because every school needs to have a ghost. And we talked about this, and then all of a sudden the kids started seeing Maria in the hallway. One of the teachers, we made her up completely. One of the teachers who was working late actually ran into her.
And what did Maria say?
And well, no, it wasn't like, "Hi, how are you? I'm Maria. I'm a ghost." It was like,
Maria.
saw her in the hallway and tried to follow her to see where she's going because why would a student be here? Blah blah blah. And I ran. I know it sounds weird. It was a Catholic school. I ran a paranormal investigating class as an elective, and we actually caught evidence of Maria. So we had Maria's face appear on a door.
You made Maria up.
We made Maria up, but the need for her was so great that she came alive. She was like a thought form, like a tulpa. Like we think, or it just happened to be a Maria because everyone was looking for a Maria. A ghost found its way to the school and said
like
hello to
it
us.
like visited. It was like.
But I got her
feeding off
saying,
the
please.
energy.
I got her saying, please help me in Spanish, like screaming, please help me in Spanish.
How does one say that?
I don't know. You can
Now,
Google
let me look it
Translate. So schools are meant to be haunted. One of the things that leads into that, I'm gonna read Margie's comment here. She said, my high school had a legend that was passed down. Our main hall was near the office was haunted. A girl was supposed to have been murdered way back when in the bathroom in the hall. No info has ever been found to back that up, but the story stuck. So again, we have the idea, and how often are these ghosts women, right? I mean, most of the ghosts, except for
Dad,
the one that you had.
If you don't know how to speak Spanish, how did you know that they were saying help me in Spanish?
Because it was a Spanish school, and I said, what is she saying? And everyone said, she's saying, please help me.
Okay. This is what she said.
Por favor, ayúdame.
I guess that's what she said. I don't
Por
remember.
favor, ayúdame. Wait, very faintly, you're like reviewing the evidence, so you just hear.
It actually was fairly loud, and it didn't say por favor. It was kind of like an informal way of saying it. So these things are natural for us, and they are often women, right? I mean, like we just talked about how many of them. What's another place that always seems to be haunted? Like schools always seem to be haunted. Would you need some of my coffee here?
Graveyards.
Graveyards. Wow. You just totally just walked into that one. What happens? What happens if the graveyard is next to the school?
I saw that. I saw something on that. I saw something on that when I was researching.
All right. What did you find on that? Do you remember?
I saw that there was something that was like there was a school that was built over a graveyard, and people were like, "Hey, this graveyard can't be under a school. Dig the bodies up. Go put them over there." They forgot one of the bodies, so the body.
Just one of the bodies.
Just one.
Because it shifted or something like that.
Yeah, because it shifted, and they couldn't find it, so they were like, "Oopsies, I'm just gonna leave it there." And then and they were like, the ghost was like, "Ha, you thought you could get rid of me? Nah."
Nah. So the ghost turned into a superhero in that story.
Yeah.
Is that what happened?
No. Yeah, but like the ghost, because like they left that one body there.
Right. So if you're gonna move the bodies, move all the bodies.
Move all the bodies.
That's the point of that
As we
story.
have learned in Poltergeist.
That's the good point. That's the moral of the story. And of course, I remember I lived in Watertown, and the Watertown High School is built right next to the cemetery. Like literally, when you look out the window, it's a headstone, not 20 feet from the wall. And that was said to be an extremely haunted
At your school?
Watertown. I didn't go to school in Watertown, but it was right near the house. So if you think of it this way, if you ever watched the footage of the police tracking down the Boston Marathon shooters, right? Bombers, I should say, and they're walking down the street. They walk literally right by that walk right next to that cemetery. That's where it was located. So it was pretty crazy. Let's travel, shall we? Back to the haunted Ocala. Why are you rolling your eyes and breathing heavy? Today we are visiting the quiet town of Deltona. Which I often got confused.
Deltona.
Deltona. You know Deltona?
Isn't that like the races? The
What?
races.
That's Daytona.
Whoops.
Daytona. Deltona, Florida, is a small town in what we'll call eastern central Florida. So it is. It's kind of a town that is deep in history. So it's kind of quaint, and then it has these large developing areas. One of those developing areas is located between Osteen Cemetery and Pine Ridge High School. When you go to Osteen Cemetery, what you're going to find is if you just kind of look off in the distance, you can see the high school. That some very old, and by very old I mean 100, like 100, 130, 140-year-old graves are right up against a fence. And that fence is on a development. And that development is on the other side of the school. So these things are all living in relationship to each other. Which do you want to hear about first? The cemetery or the school?
The school.
I knew you were going to say that. So Pine Ridge High School was built in 1994. Remember these dates, 1994. Now, it's said that at least 2 people died during the making of the school, like the building of the school.
2 people?
2 people. Neither of these incidents and accidents have been able to be verified, right? So there's no records of anyone dying, and it's not like it's, we were talking about being able to cover things up and things like this. Is not that kind of place. Like, there are no records of anyone. One of them died while building the clock tower. So now the clock tower, much like my school, Mariner, the clock tower is the center of the school, right? It's the focal point of it. It's where they have like gatherings and like where they do things. It's always around the clock tower.
Spiritual rituals to our Lord and Savior Satan.
Maybe not that. Maybe not that to that extent. But people feel that the ghost of the person who died while creating the watchtower, while building the bell tower, clock tower, I should say, returns. So since the school was built, they have had electrical problems. Not all the time, but oftentimes during announcements, which come out of the tower, another voice can be heard.
That sounds like one of my principals trying to make the announcement at the end of the day, and then the bell goes ding, ding, and then we'll her trying to talk, she'll be like mid-sentence and be like,
well,
and today we'll be ding.
This is more of like they'll be making an announcement, and then underneath people hear. Not all the time, right? But enough that people have said it sounds as if it is a ghost, or they're getting some kind of transmission. Someone's trying to speak over that, or like under that.
Ghosts can like manipulate the electromagnetic.
Exactly, and when you combine that with the rumor that someone actually died,
then it makes like total sense.
Then it makes more sense, right? So the other part of this is that the bells will go off randomly. And they've brought people in to try to fix it, to try to explain it. They can't. Like, the bells will just go off, or an announcement will go off, like the speakers will just go, and someone will be talking in that same low way, and no one has turned them on.
There's no, like, no one in the office?
Like, no one has actually turned it on. It'll just be random during the day. And some people have even said they've been walking by at night, and all of a sudden that they've heard announcements go off, or the bell go off, or something like that, like as they're walking by. All the way on campus, or all across campus, but especially near the bell tower, clock tower, people feel like they're being watched. And the place where this is the worst is in the area where the elevator is. The elevator malfunctions all of the time.
Like your school.
Like my old school. My school, the Mariner, doesn't have.
Because your elevator set on fire.
Okay, yes, but that was not. Also, they, it's new, right? It's 1994. The elevator should work perfectly fine. They've brought people in to try to fix it, and they can't seem to get it right. The elevator continues to break down, sometimes when people are on it. One of the things about the ringing of the bell is that it has a very specific tone, but this ghost bell will ring lower. So if it's like, nee, like that's your average, like, thing will go like it'll be lower and it'll hum. It'll see.
So it's like a ghost bell. Like,
there are cold spots on the buildings that are attached to the clock tower, and several teachers have reported over the years that they have seen like dark figures walking in the hallway, and then they've like gone like at like early in the morning or after school at night. They stayed and been doing work, and they see these ghostly figures, and they try to track them down. Hey, what are you doing? Blah blah blah, and the person just disappears.
Huh. This clock tower guy sounds just peachy.
Well, no one ever feels threatened, right? They feel like they're being watched. They feel like there are cold spots, that there's sadness, right? But um, not being attacked, not scary like that. Scary
Hostile.
because it's not supposed to be happening, not necessarily scary because they feel threatened or something like that. The other thing is, things disappear all the time. So teachers put something out, or they get a lesson set up, they've set up their classroom, they go, they come back, and the stuff that they just set up is gone. And I agree, right? So this could be radio interference. This could be some kind of transmission that's being warped, or they're receiving another transmission. The one thing that is really odd or creepy or different about it is that it does multiple things, right?
Yeah.
So
it does. It not only does it like interfere like with the announcements. Like I get like you would think that might be radio interference, but it also does the bells even when there's nobody in there, even at nighttime. They see like the things disappearing all the time. They see the cold spots. That's nothing to do with radio interference.
yeah, and you know, it might be a combination of radio interference with electrical problems, except for the fact it's been happening pretty much since the school opened, right? So in reading the comments and things people have posted, people have said, "Oh, I was the first graduating class there. It's been doing that since we got there." It's a known thing. You would think that in the 25 years that it's been in existence, they could have figured that out somehow, right? Um, I'll get to that, Margie. So there is definitely this rumor, and it's spread, right? There was one comment about a person who said it took them about 2 weeks of living in Deltona before, and they hadn't even been enrolled in the school yet before they started hearing it. So this is one of those things that people
know
spread, and it's spread, like I said, generationally. People have unusual things happen to them. They share it, and people say, you know, other older students say, "Oh, well, that's the ghost of the clock tower. That's the ghost of," and people kind of like, "What?" They freak out, and so that's what some people say is causing the weird activity there. But people also say, just waiting for you to stop yawning, that the activity is caused by the cemetery. That the ghosts in the cemetery are actually what people are experiencing. This is where the crisscross part comes in. That the cemetery is so ridiculously haunted that the ghosts can't contain themselves. And one of the going stories, and this is, so when I say this, when you hear this kind of stuff all the time, you're like, yeah, okay, whatever. There is confirmation of some of this part of the story, not the ghost part. But the cemetery, Osteen Cemetery, was built, and I'll get into more detail about it, was built, and it housed...
Can you please like click the pen? It makes a weird noise and I don't like it.
That?
Yeah, like click it while you're doing it. No! Okay, thank you.
It houses, or you know, it's laid to rest originally, some of the very important people of the town, right? Both residents of Osteen and what is now Osteen, what used to be Sawville, which I'll talk about, and this very, very old hauntings. But Osteen was originally a high slave area, an agricultural area. And there were many slaves who were buried near Osteen Cemetery. They were buried near Osteen Cemetery.
Yeah.
Meaning that they were buried most likely, because they don't know exactly, all they know is that it's west of the school, and they said like west of like 50 yards west of the school, there's actual documentation of that, which would place it in either the parking lot of the school or on the football field. I don't know.
Suck for the football players.
Yeah, I don't know what Osteen's football record is this year, but there definitely is this idea. Stop, because you're messing with that.
Is the high school called Osteen?
It is called Pine Ridge School, Pine Ridge High School.
Pine Ridge, okay.
that there actually is maybe the hauntings from the cemetery, especially considering that these graves would have been disturbed. So if you can imagine, here's the cemetery, right? Here's the school. Those, and then there's now a new development in between those things. The African American graves and the slave graves are buried somewhere between those two places, which would place them on the property. We would place them like in the homes, right? Or in the school itself, like the school grounds.
Yeah, like under the
Or
football
both.
field.
Or both.
You'd be like the football people would be like running. They'd be like doing the tosses or whatever you do in football.
The
and
tosses
then, like,
or whatever you do in football.
And then like you just see like a camera.
That's awesome.
And it just like grabs your foot and you're like, ah!
Sure, Elle. Why not? So the idea is that these two hauntings are connected somehow, and that the two actually feed each other. So let's talk about Osteen Cemetery.
Which one's Osteen?
That's the cemetery that we're talking about.
Okay, so the one
That's attached to the school. That's
the one
near the
with
school.
the one with the clock tower. Okay.
Uh-huh.
The one with the clock tower.
That's a school.
Pine Ridge
High School.
High School. Yeah, in
uh-huh.
Deltona.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
There's a cemetery right next to it. It's called Osteen Cemetery.
It's not right next to it.
Or it's somewhere near.
Yes.
In the middle of those two properties, there are some
There's a
type of
development.
slave burial.
Yes.
Okay, keep going.
Okay. You're just recapping for those,
Yeah,
for those
recapping.
who missed me saying
I
it.
got
You're saying
confused.
it.
Sorry.
Okay. The cemetery opened up in 1884 officially, but there are graves there that date back to 1881, which is actually the child of the Osteens themselves, MF and Annie Osteen. And there are many headstones that are so old. The oldest one that they can read is this baby. But that's not the oldest one there, people feel, because there is a whole field of probably 2 to 3 dozen headstones that are so ravaged you can't tell, and they're in a section that kind of lines up directly to the school that you can't read. So you can't really tell how old they are, and there's really no date on when exactly they were built, when exactly it was built. But it's named after the Osteen family, who was important to Volusia County. So they were a railroad family. They're kind of responsible. If you go, because I went to this cemetery, if you go to that cemetery, if you go to that area, you are going to find just store after store and street after street that are named after the Osteens, as well as the Sauls, or as well as the children of the Osteens. So it is one of those things where the entire area seems to definitely be influenced by this family. One of the really interesting things that's kind of connected to it is the story of Saul. So Saul moves to the area. Saul. He moves to the area in the mid-1800s with his wife, Adeline, and they grew with the surrounding area. So he was a businessman. He moved there. He kind of had like good luck. Everything he touched turned to gold kind of thing. And he became good friends with the Osteen. And together, they paid for the teachers, right? So they paid for teachers to come in. Those teachers taught Saul's family and the Osteens. As I'm looking at this, I'm like, why do I not have Saul's last name? Because he's only referred to as Saul, or that importantly is only Saul. Excuse me. So, and he was often referred to as Old Man Saul. One of the really cool things about him is he had all these daughters. Why are you, so now you're not showing me it all over there?
Yeah, because you got all the screen over there. My arms are too short.
Can I continue, please?
Yes.
Thank you. He was a secret agent for the Confederacy, so he was like a spy. He had daughters, and he loved his daughters to death, and he couldn't stand. I believe he said it was 5.
5 daughters?
5 and then a 6th one.
What?
So he was giving away, like when his daughters would get married, he would always offer his the the suitors $1,000, which is a lot in the 1800s, $1,000, an orange grove, or his collection of Yankee silver spoons. And if I'm remembering correctly, it was like it was some kind of Yankee metal that he had melted down and turned into spoons as an insult because he was a Confederate sympathizer to the end. And every single one of them, except for one, took the $1,000 of the orange grove, and then his last daughter actually took the spoons instead. And she didn't get married, if I remember the story correctly. And one of the things is he loved his daughters so much he would walk the grounds and walk his land and walk in the groves during their weddings. He refused to ever go to any of their wedding ceremonies. Just so you know, I'm going to be dancing the day that I get rid of you. So dancing. So the railroads came in because this was a carriage kind of property, carriage town. Came in and it killed Sawville, and Sawville fell. There, the homestead, which was kind of like the point of it, the Sawville. That's the name of the town because his name was Saul. It rose, it fell, the fires destroyed it, and so he ended up kind of all that stuff ended up being taken over by the Osteens. And the headstone, like they had this big plaque that was on the building. They had to save all this stuff, and it was moved to the Osteen Cemetery. So some people believe that the Osteen Cemetery is haunted by the remnants of Saul and his family, because not only are they buried there, but their home was desecrated, and they kind of are these wandering spirits because they were very much connected to their homestead. So now this plaque is at the cemetery when you go. The pioneer families of this cemetery put down roots on the Florida frontier, a place considered desolate at the time. In the 1500s, George and Adeline Sauls settled 2 miles west of here on a stage road. They constructed a large log home and raised 10 children, farmed and kept livestock, served travelers, and joined Osteens, carpenters, and other neighbors in the Sawville community to organize a church, hire a school teacher, and frame society. In 1884, Saul's family members denoted this burial ground along with an African-American graveyard to the west. So there's a reference to it right there. When his long life passed, George Sauls was remembered as a leading spirit in his special section of Volusia County. So there was some weird thing that happened where the plaque was removed and it was stolen and it was found and all this stuff. So there's kind of like a haunted objects kind of thing going on with the actual headstone of it. But it clearly states that there were African Americans who were buried there, and that activity might be caused by them being desecrated, right? So either way, those African Americans that he talks about were not given headstones, right? So regardless of whether they're buried on the property or they're buried in the school, like underneath the school, there are no headstones. There's no markers. So they could be anywhere, right? But even no matter where they are, there's nothing that signifies that they were there. There's nothing that kind of remembers their life at all. Most of the headstones in one location predate this. I went there. Do you want to know the saddest thing I've ever seen in a cemetery?
What?
So I posted these pictures a while ago. I don't know if I want to post them again after we do this episode. But there's a headstone of a guy who was 30. He's 33. He died about a year ago, and he died in from what I can tell, a motorcycle accident. In front of his headstone, I would definitely not want to live in that subdivision either. In front of that headstone is a bench, and it's like a little swing, and it's you can tell that it's someplace that people go often. that this guy is so grieved for. 33, right? I mean, that's like prime of your life, right? When I went there, blankets are there, pillows are there. There was a lighter, like one of the clickety click lighters, that we like use to light candles, as well as lantern oil. So this is some place that people spend time with. It was like the saddest thing, because you can just imagine someone going there, and in the midst of all this ghost talk and stuff like that, we have to kind of acknowledge the fact that this cemetery has had a few different lives, and that it is still a very active cemetery. So I wouldn't suggest kind of going out there and hunting it because, or investigating it or being disrespectful, because it is an active place where people are still going, including at least one grieving parent. I just got the feeling of the mother sitting there, like with the blanket on, like in front of her son. Would you like to know some of the activity that goes on there?
Let me know.
Or do you want to know about the murder? There's a murder?
There's a murder.
It's hard to tell when exactly Osteen Cemetery got its reputation for being as haunted as it is. It has definitely increased in the last 7 years since this murder. So a lot of people feel that the murder that happened there could be a spark that kind of opened everything else up. And that is the murder of James Shaffer. So James Shaffer, I'm going to give you the little version of the story. You should really go to Paradise After Dark and get their episode on the whole thing, because there is so much crazy stuff involved with this. It's got to be one of the craziest murders I've ever heard of. His name is James Shaffer. His murderer was a woman by the name of Angela Stout. Okay? So Angela had a bank account, so she was kind of on disability. She is definitely...
James, how do you spell his
don't look it up while I'm
not looking it up, I just need to write it down.
She is definitely... It's right here. You can look it up afterwards. She is definitely crazy. She is someone who, spoilers, is... she's serving life in prison, but she needs to be in a mental health facility. Like, there's no way that a sane person does what she did. So, in April 2013, Angela drugs her friend, James, who it seemed what the issue was that he didn't have a bank account. And so he would deposit his money into her bank account, and then he would use her bank account as kind of his bank account too. And so he had access to it, but he was withdrawing more money, maybe because he had a gambling habit, something like that. And she found out about it, and I'm telling you, this story is a lot crazier than I can even make it, if you hear all the details. So in early April 2013, she has him at the house. She drugs him, right? And here's kind of where the story is weird, if you believe like things like that I've talked about with the Ocala, and I've talked about with the Bridgewater Triangle. She brings him to this cemetery, which, like I said, I don't know what it looked like in 2013, but it's pretty out of the way. Like, you have to go around this. You have to know it's there to get there. It's not like you're going to stumble upon it. She stabs him in the eye, then strangles him with climbing rope, and then, just to make sure that he's dead, she stabs him in the other eye. Okay? She brings him back to the house.
Really wants that guy dead.
Really. Brings him back to the house, has 2 kiddie pools set up, and she essentially starts to hack up the body parts and separate them into these pools.
Oh my god, this woman.
She tries to... Now, I'm trying to get this part of the story correct. She tries to cook him in the oven, right? Finds that the body's too big. And also, from what I understand, from what it sounds like in one of the interviews that she gave, the police came. And the police kind of questioned her on her porch, from what I'm gathering, from what her statement is. But if they had come into the house, they would have actually, like, the smell of the cooking friend would have been so bad that they would have known what was going on. For some reason, that doesn't work, so she abandons that. and she decides to put all the definitely mental, to put the different body parts in pans or in pots and boil all the skin off of him.
Oh my
So
god.
to boil him in these pots, which once again creates this horrible smell. The kids complain about it, and
The kids? She's kids?
she's got kids, older kids.
Adoption. Put them in the adoption center,
Actually,
please.
she has several different kids that are of different ages. So then she decides to take the body parts and she dumps the remaining body parts, except for the head, which is never found, in the Osteen cemetery. Now, I don't know about you, but if that's the kind of stuff that's happening in that cemetery, it definitely begs the question, why was she drawn back to that cemetery? Now, if you've been to Osteen, there's a lot of woods. There's a lot of places that you can dump a body, that you can bring to a secluded place. It might have looked differently 7 years ago, but there is something about this cemetery that drew them to it. And they weren't having an affair or anything like that. It was strictly friendship. But she was compelled to not only murder him in that cemetery, but then also to bury him there, to dump him there, I should say. He wasn't really buried. At that cemetery, it has all the classic things. And I've been to a lot of different cemeteries. This, I would say that I've never felt like I was being watched and followed more than I was in this cemetery. I actually could hear footsteps behind me. I could hear like the crunching of leaves.
Dude,
but I definitely felt as I was walking all along that I wasn't alone. And it's kind of weird because we've talked about this idea of the world dropping off, the world dropping away. There were people who were working on the development right there at the fence. There was someone who was building something in one section. There was lawn care being done. I remember lawnmowers. And not only can you not hear any of those on the tape that I made when I was in the cemetery, I don't remember hearing them once I got in there. And they were loud, pulled up, going there, and I'm hearing them. As I start walking, they kind of fade away. Could they have stopped? Yeah, I guess so. But I mean, it was like a crew out there. And the crew was out there when I left, too. So it's not like, unless I happened to be there during their lunch break, which could very well have been the case. When people are there, they hear this horrible moaning. Especially from the older section of the cemetery. When you go there, you can definitely tell. This is like you can almost follow history by following how the graves are treated and how they're maintained, and then how old the actual headstones are. There is a dark figure that's seen, like several dark figures that are seen, kind of running around. I didn't experience any of that. And the last one, which I find really interesting, which is probably the most talked about ghost that's there, is the... Whoa. All right.
He didn't like that.
That's crazy.
He didn't like that.
But we're just going to continue as if the episode is still going on. It's a man whistling.
He didn't like
And
that.
they don't... No one hears it. No one sees anything. All they know is that they are whistling. And it seems like a happy tune that people have described as it's like happy, it's upbeat, and then all of a sudden it kind of goes to nothingness, right? Or like a very, very sad tune, and then just kind of fades away. And you can hear it as if it's being whistled right next to you, as if the person is right next to you, but there's no one there. And what people have said, that's the ghost of the janitor. That's the ghost, the guy who died building the clock tower.
Ah.
Right? That, oh yeah, we heard that guy, he used to whistle as soon as he worked, and blah, 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 and that's why he maybe wasn't paying attention when it... So even though these two stories and these two places are connected by this African-American idea, they're, and the hidden graves, and maybe the murders, and in actuality, they're also crisscrossed because the man who supposedly died on the other end of the development, in a school who can't be confirmed, is haunting the cemetery as well. And what I found really unusual is that
our Facebook turned off.
that is very unusual. But what I find really unusual is this idea that with a town full of people who have passed, and there are hundreds of graves there, with generational burials, right? Over 150 years, right? At least 170 years. Why do people think it's the guy? Don't play with that at all. Why do people think it's the guy from the school? Why would they connect those two things? There are plenty of other suspects for who the whistling man could be.
Because like people usually
You
associate.
got to talk a little louder.
People usually associate whistling with hard work. Like you know, like the song, like the one.
Whistle while you work.
Whistle
Hard
while you work.
ho.
It's like whistle while you work.
Hard ho.
So I think most people like
Gotcha.
associate whistling
With a laborer or
with a laborer or somebody who works like.
Yeah, but why not? Why not associate it with the African American slaves and grove workers and the land workers
Like
who also traditionally, in our stereotypical kind of way, also were associated with whistling and stuff like
the
that.
ragtimes and Sweet Chariot.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like, those kind of things. Like, it just seems really interesting to me that with all of that kind of displayed and all that possible, the whistling man is the guy from the school. Like, why do you think they would think that? That's kind of an odd explanation for it, with so much other stuff there. Is this someplace you would want to go?
To Alchian Cemetery?
Osteen Cemetery?
Osteen, that one.
Is that someplace you would want to go? Like, the moaning, the whistling man. I didn't get any whistling. I tried. I didn't get any moaning or whistling. Would you go to that cemetery?
Maybe. Depends on the day.
Okay, that doesn't make any sense. What do you mean by that?
It makes perfect sense.
Sure. How does that make sense?
I mean, like, if I'm not scared, or if it's not, like, on the full moon, it's biggest.
Why do you think the full moon would have any impact on that whatsoever?
Or, like, on Halloween.
On Halloween. Good, because we're going there on Halloween. Why not? All right. We should do something on Halloween, no?
Because I'm doing something with Destiny. We're planning it.
That's the night before.
No, I think we're going to do both that and...
Whatever. All right. So, there's definitely something we should do on Halloween. I think that we should do something on Halloween.
We should watch
that
The
has
Shining
something
on Dr.
paranormally.
I don't. We should watch The Shining.
I don't think you're quite ready for The Shining.
I'm ready for The Shining.
It might be a little bit. It's scary in a different way. It's scary in an intense way. It's not like a jump scare. Remember how you guys were freaked out by Poltergeist? Not because of it, but because it had stuff that was like mentally messing with you.
Yeah.
The Shining does. It has the same kind of.
Go like this and it like peels out. That peels off his face. Yeah, that one.
Yeah, I like that. Students scaring friends at the cemetery, like you follow them, like as if it's to say, like to add even a more intense explanation or an intense backstory or lore to the haunting at the school. He's also at the cemetery back there. He actually travels all the way there. Almost gives him more power, more mystique to it, all that kind of good stuff. So we are into Halloween week. I've got big plans. Today is Tuesday. By the time you hear this, if you're listening to it live, either on Facebook or on Instagram, or even on FM, Midnight FM. Yeah, but let me finish it. Midnight FM.
Where it's always midnight.
I am having two events that you can participate in. If you're listening to this on podcast, by the time this comes out, you're not going to be able to participate. You can get the podcast, especially the older episodes, anywhere you get podcasts, iTunes, Google Play, anywhere other than Spotify. Spotify doesn't like me. They won't allow me to play because I have video. But if you are in the area and you are watching this or you pick it up tomorrow, on Wednesday, I'm doing another library event a virtual event again with the Orange County Library System. The one I did the first 3, they brought me back for a 4th one, which is about Native Americans. Why are you frowning?
So good to come.
You can go to that one. You can like watch it at home if you want. Watch it at your mom's house. And then on Friday, and I'm trying to get them to turn this into a live event as well. I know. I will be in Ruskin, Florida. This is going to be a very interesting. I've been developing it with the people, and it's going to be a dramatic telling of just the stories. So there's going to be no folklore attached. If you watched our episode that Elle and I did about the storyteller versus the folklorist, I've got kind of 7, I have right now, probably down to 6 of my favorite stories, especially in that area, stripped down. Unfortunately, Elle is not going to be able to participate in it. Stripped down to just the ghost story. And I've kind of got some interesting things to frame it. And then the second half is going to be the story of the Swamp Witch and kind of its connection to Pemberton Ferry. It's going to be one long, rambling ghost story. So those are kind of some interesting events that we've got going in the next couple of days. And we're going to see where Tripping on Legends goes after that, right? Because then we've got the books due and all that kind of good stuff. And so, you know, we're going to hopefully be able to hit some other Florida areas. I'm dying to go to the Panhandle and see what we can find in the Panhandle, right? So, make sure that you're following us at Facebook. We're at facebook.com/trippingonlegends. On Instagram, we're at Spooky Tripping. At Twitter, we're at Spooky Balzano. And of course, the website is trippingonlegends.com. You can hit up any of these platforms so you can get... TikTok has been slow in coming. Maybe once the book is finished, we can do the TikTok. So... but we've got a lot of things going on and a lot of ways to connect with us. And like always, we would love to hear your stories, your legends, even if they're not in Florida, your town stuff. So please feel free to share and to connect with us as much as you possibly can. Have an amazing Halloween. I am Christopher Balzano.
And Diane Ella Balzano.
And here's hoping that all of your trips
are legendary.
and spooky.